Alright, you guys. Got 3 games to share with you. The first 2 were submitted by followers, and then I've got one of my own. And there's a kind of a theme to all of this, which is that you can rely on blunders. You can rely on mistakes. If you are below probably 1800, right, then you can rely on that. Your opponents will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. Okay, and really, the path to improvement in chess at the beginner and intermediate level is not really about finding brilliant moves. It's about reducing the blunder count, reducing your mistakes, reducing everything that's within your control, within your knowledge of the game and experience. So, just 3 nice light-hearted games to spice up your weekend. Okay, so this was sent to me by Stricky77, who's rated just over 1,000, and his opponent, Silent But Violent, is also rated very, very close. Okay, so we've got e4, e5, c3, the Vienna, and knight to c6. Now, the normal move, I believe, here is bishop to c4. But Stricky here plays f4. So goes for the Vienna gambit anyway, even though this knight has come out rather than this knight. So normally if this knight's here and the pawn is taken, you can advance the e-pawn to e5 and it causes trouble. But here it's not quite so big of a threat. But anyway, black takes the pawn and we have d4. So Stricky's given up a pawn, but in return he's got an iron grip over the centre of the board. Now bishop flies out and he recaptures the pawn. So material is equal, but he has 2 advanced central pawns, whereas black has no pawns at all out of the starting blocks. So it's looking quite good for white right now. Okay, and now the knight comes out, and when you've got 2 pawns in the middle and you've got 2 knights on their natural squares on the 6th rank, there's really only one thing to do: advance the e-pawn and cause trouble. So now the knight is forced to retreat, and again, so that's 2 tempi completely spaffed, right? He's got nothing to show for his last 2 moves. Okay, so now, as white, how do you capitalize on this? Well, first thing that you need to think about is king safety. And in the Vienna, whenever the f-pawn has disappeared, I would always play this move, okay? Because you want to avoid this queen down here. Could cause mischief. I mean, right now we've got g3, for example. But in this case, Stricky decides to kick the bishop. I don't think that's necessary right now. Very often in the Vienna game, or Vienna gambit particularly, when the f-pawn is gone, you'll develop your knight, you'll develop your bishop normally to here, looking at the f7, and castle kingside, putting your rookie rook straight on this lovely semi-open f-file. Okay, so, and honestly, bishop takes and b recaptures is no bad thing. You end up with quite a pawn dominance in the centre of the board there. So I think this move was unnecessary. I think I would probably have played one of these 2 now. Anyway, black now outflies the queen. Queen comes out with check. Now here I think g3 is definitely playable. But white just drops the bishop back with tempo, you would guess, attacking the queen. However, now we have to see, there's 2 attackers on this pawn. Okay, queen can't go here or here or even here or here. But the queen now drops back to g5, eyeing up this square with check. Okay, and suddenly it feels like white's big space advantage is actually coming back to haunt him. And the reason is because he's been slow in development here, right? So here I think knight to f3 looks perfectly playable, and indeed that's what is played. And now queen comes into e3. And now this is starting to look quite scary for white, yeah? So bishop blocks. Bishop captures the knight on c3, pawn recaptures, queen captures the pawn. Okay, so now we're in check again. We have queen blocks. And if queen takes, knight takes, and I would say that white is still probably better, although this pawn could also fall. But white plays now king to f2, interesting move. And now the knight comes out to h6, because it can't come out to f6, it's natural square. Okay, now the slowish h3 is preventing the knight from coming here. So you can see what black's idea is, and white saw what black's idea is. If the knight comes in here, king has to retreat onto the back rank again. Might not be the end of the world. But h3 just prevents that knight's idea. Knight can still come here though. And indeed it does. And now we have d5 pushed, kicking the other knight. And queen into e3 with check. Right, this is bottom clenching chess. King drops back to f1 again. Now the knight grabs the bishop with a fork on the king and the rook. And what would your assessment be of this situation? Scary monsters, not nice at all. I mean, the king's only got one square to go to, king to e1. And here, black chooses not to grab the rook. I would have grabbed the rook, I think, here. You see, you want to grab the rook, and then that means the knight's covering this square, and you've got queen f2 check. And it's looking very horrible. I mean, white is actually ahead by a knight and 2 pawns at this point, already +5 in material to black. Grabbing the rook would have probably been the end of the game. So here we have an exchange of knights. And now the rook gets out of trouble, and black castles. And look at white's situation now, right? Whereas it looked in the start like he had a grip on the game, that iron, clad control, now he's in a world of hurt. And black's king is nicely tucked up in the corner with a mug of cocoa and his slippers on, and just sitting back and watching the proceedings. This bishop, we notice, is also pinned, attacked by queen and knight. This bishop and this rook are still yet to play any part in the proceedings. So now, queen to d3 comes out to attack the knight, obviously, but the knight is defended. Now also, should this knight ever move, we've got a discovered attack on the rook as well. Oh, bam, boom! So the queen's just undefended the rook, didn't spot the other queen was looking at the rook. We've lost another rook. And it's all going horribly wrong now for white. Queen comes back up to here to defend the knight, but it's only one defender, it's actually attacked twice. So queen takes. Queen moves down with check. Okay, but black is still +7 in material here. King comes back again to the back rank. Queen grabs another pawn for good measure. Queen grabs a pawn. Free stuff. Now the rook comes across to the open file. Good move. And g3. I mean, white's got nothing here. Surely it's all going to be over very, very soon. Queen f5 check. Rook blocks to f2, but undefends this pawn at the same time. Queen takes the pawn. Check. King e1 now moves into the path of the looming rook on e8. Rook moves up there now. Okay, now black here is in a totally winning position. Well, let's say black here is in a totally winning position, right? Got a huge material majority, and what do we focus on? Whether we are winning, losing, in a blocked up, what is rule number 1 all the time? King safety, okay? Rook to e7. It's got 4 minutes on the clock, right? Just a lazy move. Can you see the finish? This is like a puzzle. Queen d8 check. There's only one legal move. Rook there, queen captures, checkmate. White wins. Thank you very much. Good night. Boom. Just goes to show, right? King safety. Rule number 1 and 2. Rule number 1, is my king safe? Number 2, is my king really safe? All right, shall we look at the second game? Come on, let's do this. Okay, this is Hop09 sent this one in. He's rated 1054, his opponent's Secret Cove rated 1018. And Hops has the black pieces. And Secret Cove starts with the Reti opening. Tricky kind of opening. So this is a rule breaker, right? Now, I wouldn't recommend this for beginning players. the Reti is like a hyper-modern opening. So we're going back like 100 years when people started going, well, do you know what, guys? I mean, do you have to compete for the centre right at the start of the game? What about we focus on developing our pieces and then maybe using our bishops on diagonals and our knights, and then strike out for the centre? So you can give your opponent the centre to start with while you build up your forces like on the flanks and then compete for the centre. So that's the like hyper-modern approach. The King's Indian is similar, you know, with the pawn there and bishop there. So we're not starting with the the usual e4 and d4 moves. Okay. Hops now replies in kind, which is actually, I think, a book move. And now we're going into a King's Indian attack, and Hops mirrors, and now d4 is played. Bishop fianchettos, castles, knight to c3. So far, so normal. And now d6. Okay, and the purpose of this move is to prevent this pawn coming to e4, e5, and attacking this knight and losing tempo, losing time, because the knight has to move. We don't want that. And indeed, here comes e4, and now bishop flies out to pin the knight, and e5 is played. Okay, so far so normal. D's going to take e5, D's going to take e5, and now we have a trade of queens. Now the king isn't forced to move here, because the knight now captures. However, this is still not great for white because it means he's just undeveloped his knight. He's just moved his knight now to a square where it has no influence over the centre of the board, no attacking possibilities as well. Knights are short-range pieces. They are useful in defence, like this guy, and they're useful in attack if they can, for example, you know, dive in towards the opponent's king. Otherwise, you know, they're not the most flexible of pieces, right? So, black here now moves his own knight backwards to attack this pawn, but it's attacked twice, right? We've got bishop and knight looking at that pawn. It's defended only once. All right, now knight here moves. Now, here, one option could be bishop takes knight, forcing the king to recapture, make the king move. I think that would have been an idea. But this pawn now, I mean, that's an unusual move, really. Knight to here, because it's just undefended, this pawn. It had one defender, it now has none. So here black doesn't capture. Why doesn't black capture here? Hard to say. I think bishop takes would have been perfectly good. Knight takes possibly just as good. You know, we've got targets here. This pawn's looking weak. I would definitely prefer black in this situation, but black here plays c6. Okay. I guess that's just reducing this bishop's options by one. And also, of course, yeah, here we go. That's the threat. Bishop takes b7 wins the pawn and the rook. Okay, so well spotted. Hops, plays c6. I see it now. Just frustrating this bishop. And now the knight starts to come back out, okay? So again, this knight has really wasted a couple of moves, capturing and coming back to make itself useful. Now we grab the pawn. And now f4 is played. Ooh, f4. So this means that, no, I mean, it's still possible. You know, I have this structure in the Leningrad Dutch quite a lot, and it is playable. Or is white thinking about casting that way? We don't know. Let's find out. Okay, knight comes in now. So there's tension between these two guys. But surely black's knight is undefended. Indeed it is. Oh no, black's just blundered a piece and has gone down a knight for... Oh! Good move. Look at this though, guys. Look at this move. All right? Knight to here. Oh no, my knight. Oh no, your knight. This comes with a discovered attack against the undefended knight on d4. Boom, but bada boom. Okay, nice. And now we have these two developed bishops. Black is castled. Black just needs to develop his final knight. Yeah, still fancying black in this situation. Okay, h3. Bishop drops back now, attacking the undefended knight. Okay, you see lots and lots of moves with tempo, forcing your opponent to have to respond. Knight now comes here, attacking this undefended pawn on b7. Bishop drops back, which attacks the knight but does nothing to help defend this pawn. So the knight grabs the pawn. Okay, so now material is equal. Both sides have lost a queen, a knight and 2 pawns. Bishop comes back again to hit the knight. I'm not sure about that move. It feels like, I think one good question you should ask on every single turn is this. Does this move, would this move improve my position? Or would it make my position worse? Would it improve my enemy's position? Now, here, this is a decent bishop, right? It's on a couple of reasonable diagonals. Here, we've just moved a step away from connecting the rooks. We've imprisoned this guy on a8 even more. And what's achieved? Well, the knight can't go here because rook can capture. Knight can't go here because pawn takes. Knight can't go here because bishop takes. Knight can't go here because bishop takes. So maybe there is a point after all. Bishop comes to there. The knight falls. Good play by Hops. He's now back in front by a piece. Good stuff. And now white castles. Castle's long. So let's just briefly review. Black's been castled for a while. Has a dark squared weakness. White still has a dark squared bishop, right? There are no queens on the board, however. White has just managed to castle, finally, on move 18. Pawns are fairly equal. We've got a 4-on-3 pawn majority on the king side for black. White has a pawn majority 3-on-2 isolated pawns on the queen side. So it's looking fairly even. However, black's advantage here is he has an extra knight. So when you have an advantage, when there's an imbalance in your favor in the game, you want to maximize the benefit to you. You want to leverage your advantage. So what I would be thinking about at this point is this knight needs to come up. This knight needs to get to a nice square, something like there. Even that would be amazing to get to with a fork, you know. But this knight needs to enter the game pretty quickly, I would say. Okay, so here comes the knight to d7. Bishop comes out now. Knight to c5, offering itself for a trade. That would be very much in black's favor because we have an open board. You notice there are no pawns in deadlock right now. Okay, all the pawns on the board can move, right? Apart from this guy here that the knight's just temporarily in front of. But you know, if bishop takes, bishop moves, we have mobile pawns. We have a fluid board. We have lots and lots of open lines on the board. And what that means is that this board favors these guys, these high-speed, long-range bishop guys. Okay, this guy is a lot less useful, right? He comes into his own when the position is tied up, locked up, and sticky and clunky. Now, does white make the mistake of trading bishop for knight? He does. Not a good move at all, Precious. Not a good move. He's just given up his own dark squared bishop, right? And black's weakness, I'd say black's got two weaknesses, right? One is the fact that this pawn is being pushed, okay? So there are weaknesses on the dark squares around the king, okay? In which case the dark squared bishops become quite critical. The other weakness is the missing b pawn, leaving these two guys isolated. So what I would be thinking strategically as well is throw these guys. These guys are not powerful. They're not defensible. They've got no b pawn to defend them or to defend in turn. So I would be thinking about these pawns as kamikaze pawns, get them up there and try and mess up white's king safety up here. Just disrupt these guard pawns right now. And so also now black has the bishop pair, which could come in very useful in the endgame. We have rook down to e7 now. So this is a fork. It's looking at that, which is actually defended by the bishop, and he's looking at this guy, who is currently undefended. So what do we do? Good, good. So we've played the bishop forwards onto a nice diagonal, which is much better than, I think, than playing him backwards onto here, and again disconnecting the rooks. So this is all fine. But we undefend the pawn. And now rook c8. I like this move. It puts the rook in line with the enemy king. So if these bishops disappear, we've even got ideas of like bishop to there because this pawn will be pinned. Bishop moves away. Good. Rook to d8, centralizing the rook, and we trade off rooks. Not a good idea. Secret cove. You don't want to be trading off and making equal trades when you're a piece down. So secret cove is now here, simplifying his way to oblivion. Okay, we have a check from the bishop. That's a nice move. There's only one move here. King has to go to b1. Now rook comes in. Now rook comes in. And now a very clever move. Okay, what would you play as black in this situation? All right. Rook f2? Are you sure, sir? Are you absolutely sure, sir? Now, key thing. King's moved to b1. What does that mean? King can only has the back rank. Okay? This is what we call a decoy. Rook takes bishop. Hurrah! I've equalized in... Uh-oh. I haven't equalized. Well, I've kind of equalized in material. I'm up a pawn. Let's celebrate. Okay? Bam, bam. Right? King has no squares. And critically, the rook can only go to e1. The bishop can only block on d1. Now, if these two pieces were looking at the same square on the back rank, then this would easily be blockable. You know, if the rook could go to there, it's not a problem. Equal game. As it is, game over. And we have resignation by black. So, by white. So, this is a game that really flowed both ways. I think black played very well, actually, overall. And look, you know, here, just went for the honey trap. It's got half an hour. Half an hour. 29 minutes, 23 seconds left on his clock. And he just didn't calculate. What is the moral? The moral is people screw up. People screw up all the time in chess at the beginner and intermediate level. You can count on them screwing up, okay? Now the trick is don't be the guy who screws up. Simple as that. Right, now game number 3. This is one of my own, and this is actually a daily game, okay? And here I'm rated just under 1400 daily. My opponent Jay Parfit 2005. I think this is the third game that we played. And I start with d4, knight to f6, knight to c3. So we're going for this Jabava London setup. And now bishop out to f4, and d5 is played, and e3, releasing the light squared bishop. Also giving the knight maybe a safe square there, protected by the bishop. And bishop comes out here. Knight now flies into b5. And look at this. This is a key thing. This is a big difference between the Jobava London, where you play on knight to c3, and the regular vanilla London, where the knight often comes to d2 in front of the queen, okay, in a kind of a passive defensive situation. But it's strong and solid in a defensive way. This is much more attacking. So clearly the knight here is attacking that pawn there. Now, this forces now knight to a6, okay? And now this knight is actually stuck defending that pawn. And what's more, this rook is stuck defending this pawn, okay? So this knight and bishop between them have managed to tie up a knight and a rook. What's more, they're in good advanced central positions, whereas this knight is in a very horrible position and this rook hasn't done anything at all. So now a4 is played to protect this knight. The next move should be like c3, just taking away this square. Okay, castles, and c4. I play c4. And now c5. Interesting. So we have big tension in the middle of the board with these pawns, eh? Okay, knight to f3. Now queen out with check. You can see the importance of defending this knight again. Queen comes out with check. Queen blocks. Knight now moves. So now the king has castled, this knight does not have to defend that square anymore. Okay. And I now retreat my knight to block any ideas of a discovered attack on my queen from there. Now bishop comes in, so black is now starting to use all of his pieces together. He's now completed development, right? And he's connected his rooks on the back rank. White, however, still has not completed development and is looking, you have to say, somewhat cramped. Rook c1. Now pawn takes in the middle, knight takes in the middle. Now looking at this bishop. Knight comes in with an attack. Knight takes, bishop takes. And it's all getting really sharp now in the middle of the board, right? Bishop to e2, now preparing to castle. Bishop takes g2, because this move obviously undefends the g2 pawn. Now castling is not an option, and the rook is under threat. Rook g1. Pawn to e5 now. Spots the pawn fork, right? This is a daily game. I've got 24 hours, right, to check and double check each move, okay? I'm rated 1400 in daily, and I'm making some basic errors. However, this is decent. You should always look for this. Always remember this. I'm in a fork, okay, or a double attack, for example, where a piece moves with an attack and with a discovered attack, you know. How can I save my pieces? Well, one way, can I move one of my pieces and create a threat of greater impact than the threat that's being aimed at me, right? So, also notice, rook is attacking this bishop. So, black now has a queen under attack, a bishop under attack, and is attacking my bishop. So, Tarantino time. Okay, queen takes a4. Now, what do I play? Do I rescue this guy or do I capture this guy? Let's find out. Neither. I attack the queen again. Queen moves again. But now the knight's under attack. Now I capture black's knight. Everybody was kung fu fighting, weren't they? Look at this. This is sharp as, guys. Okay. So now I'm actually up a knight for 2 pawns at this point in time. But I've got a bishop under attack on prise. Okay. And here, black decides to capture a pawn rather than the bishop. However, of course, now the queen is defending this bishop. Okay, so I can't just grab that guy, but I can defend this guy. What do? I defend that guy. Good move, Hunty. Now, rook here, piling up the pressure on this knight. What's the knight going to do? Nothing. Rook takes c4, winning a pawn and adding another defender to the knight. This is nail-biting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Attacking the pinned piece. Tactics 101, right? The knight is pinned because the queen and the rook have a barrage against this. Oh, no, they don't. Bishop's defending, queen's defending. We're okay. The knight can freely move, but can't move here, because it would block the bishop's defense of the rook, of course. So the knight moves back to b3. a5, hitting the queen. Boom! I'll take your queen, you take my queen, I'll take your rook, you take my rook, I'll take your bishop. Bang! Ben Hunt 72, +4. Okay, winning position. Winning position. I am up 2 pieces? For some pawns. Yeah, I'm up 2 pieces. Black's got 2 more pawns, but look at these. These are terrible, right? Okay, time to take your foot off the gas and coast home, isn't it, everybody? If you've been following my videos, Okay, in comes the rook. Double attack. Now it's defended. That guy is not defended. Now I'm thinking here, king safety, always a good idea, right? Let's get the king safe. Okay, rook takes that, but now it's attacking the knight, so I have to move my knight. Okay, knight moves. Now the king is now the only defender of the knight. Okay, what does black play? Rook a2, just clearing a path for this guy to come through and try and promote. Okay, but this is desperate times now. Bishop c4, attacking the rook and also pinning this pawn against the king. Pawn advances forwards. And for some reason here, Okay, now I can't take the pawn with a knight because that drops a rook. Okay, I could take the pawn with a pawn, and in retrospect I probably should. Okay, but instead I decide to go after these guys. I think I figured I could have just grabbed the rook as well, eh? Why didn't I just take the rook? Why you not capture the rook? What you speak? What you playing at? Right? My opponent has left his rook hanging, dangling, completely one position. All I have to do is take the rook. I've only got 24 hours to find that move. You don't have to be stockfish. Pawn takes f3. Okay, now, pawn's threatening the rook. I can't take the pawn with a knight because then I lose my rook. Okay, so rook to f2. Okay, you are black. You're in a horrible situation. Oh no, I've just realised my rook's under attack. What do you play? Rook c2 now. Okay, pinning one bishop against the other bishop. However, there was a better move here, but my opponent finds it soon enough. Bishop takes b6 now, just grabbing some material. Uh-oh, rook c1, check and mate. The pawn is covering that square, the rook is covering the back rank, there's nothing to be done. Okay? What a cock-up. Right? Everybody screws up. Now, here, even here, I could have just grabbed the rook. Right? Given up my rook, king there, protecting the square, and I've got bomb, 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 3 minor pieces against the solo bishop. Right? Totally one position. Totally buggered it up, didn't I? Boom. Now, I think my opponent, I think this would have been checkmate into anyway. So after I played this, I think that, and then the only move I've got is knight here, and then that I think would be mate. Oh no, I've got king can escape to here. Yeah, because after the knight moves, but there, bang, the knight can't move, can't interpose. Simple checkmate. So there you go, guys. You know, I'm like 1450, high 1400s rapid player, much more experienced than my opponent, who I'm guessing is about 16 years old, and I've got 24 hours to make each move, and I cock up in the most magnificent way and throw away a game that was won so many times. And this is one of the things that you can bank on, right? Doesn't matter who you're playing. Does not matter who you're playing. Experienced players, any players, beginners, whatever, will start to get overexcited when they've got a winning position, and will probably just relax a little bit, take your foot off the pedal, and think, oh, I can now walk this one in, I can coast home, right? White is completely crushing in this situation, and I just got punked at the last minute with a surprise back rank mate. Just goes to show. Now, so, you know, what does this mean for your play? For your play, it means that the easiest way for you to improve over the coming weeks and months is to cut down on the blunders. And how do you cut down on the blunders? The goldfish method, apart from anything else, right? The checklist. Let's say here, right, this situation, okay, goldfish. Okay, the pawn is attacking my rook. Okay, rook's defending that, king's defending that, rook's attacking that, so that's kind of under threat. This bishop's attacking that. You know, this bishop's potentially attacking that. That's undefended. You know, this is all pretty straightforward, simple stuff. But the main thing is that rook's undefended. Okay, so here, take the rook. You have my rook. King here. It's all over. It's literally all over. This pawn moves forward. I can just block it with my bishop, with pressure on there. What's black got here? Oh, he can promote and then lose. He's got nothing at all. Okay, so you've got to tell the story of the board. What's going on the board? Okay, even at this point, that's just winning, totally winning. I didn't even look at it. I don't think I even saw it. All I saw was, oh no, my rook is being attacked, right? Let's move out of trouble. Come to here, and I just didn't look, okay? Rule number 1 of Chess Club, king safety, okay? What moves does my king have? Okay, my king can go there and there, but not there. Okay, that means rook to here is checkmate. You don't have to be Kasparov to figure that one out. Okay, but you know that's the beauty of the game. You know, people screw up. So on Rapid on chess.com, I am in the top 5% of players on chess.com. Right, so you can beat 95% of players, because you can bank on the fact that they're going to screw up. And they will. Okay? Even here, that would have been absolutely fine as well. You know, you can't take my bishop, it's protected by the knight. You know, the number of ways in which this game is won for white is incalculable. And it's completely winning. My opponent said in the chat, you probably let me win. I did not, mate. I screwed up. And you did what you had to do. And this is what you've got to do. Look at the board, tell the truth about the board, tell the whole story about the board on every move, and good moves will present themselves, okay? Just don't make really bad ones. Can you do that? I know you can do that. Yeah, you got this. All right, there you go, bit of inspiration. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Chess Bootcamp if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you soon.